The chicken feed companies do not want you to hear what I am about to tell you. So lean in close and give me the next few minutes, because this one is going to save you real money. Every spring it is the same fight. Your flock grows, the feed bill climbs, and the sack that ran you $18 last year is $22 this year, and half of it is dust at the bottom. You are hauling home another bag every couple of weeks, watching the money walk out the door, and those companies are counting on exactly that. They need you standing at that store buying one more bag, and one more after that, because that steady drain out of your pocket is their whole business. But there's a trick. One jar, some water, and 3 days sitting on your counter. That takes the very same feed you already paid for and turns it into near about twice as much. So your birds eat better and you spend about half. Purina and Nutrina and the folks who print the label would rather eat the bag than have you hear it. So stay with me, because right in the middle of this, I am going to show you the one mistake that turns this jar into a moldy mess and makes folks give up on it. And I saved the biggest piece of all, the reason this actually puts more eggs in your basket for the very end. Before we go on, do me one small favor. Drop a comment and tell me what state you are keeping chickens in and about how much you are spending on feed every month right now. Just those two things. I read every one. My grandmother Ada kept the hens behind my grandfather Walt's cattle place in southern Ohio, and she never once fed those birds straight out of a dry sack. I am thinking of the years around 1961. She kept an old stone crock on the back porch with a plate laid over it, and every morning she dipped feed out of that crock, and it always had a smell to it, a little sour, a little tangy, like the start of bread dough. I thought that was just her way. It turned out that sour crock was stretching the family's grain by half and doing the birds more good than the dry feed ever could. I did not understand it as a boy. I understand it now, and I am going to hand it to you. But first, let me put a number on what this is costing you, because it adds up fast. Say you have got a good spring flock, and you are going through a bag of feed a week. At $20 a bag, that is $80 a month, and near $1,000 over a year just to keep those birds fed. And every spring you add more hens, so the bill only climbs. Some folks are running $200-300 a month once the flock gets going. Now take that same bill and cut it close to in half, year after year, and tell me that is not worth 3 days and a jar. Think about what that is over 10 years of keeping chickens. That is thousands of dollars, real money, that walked out of your pocket and into theirs for no reason but that nobody told you different. The feed companies have trained a whole country to pour dry feed into a pan and watch the birds gobble it down and still act hungry an hour later. That is the part that ought to bother you. A hungry bird eats more feed, and more feed sold is the only thing that store cares about. Now let me take you back to that crock, because to see why this works, you have to understand what my grandmother's sour feed was actually doing. Dry grain is locked up tight. A chicken eats a big pile of it, passes a good share of it right through undigested, and stays hungry, so she eats again. What was happening in that crock was a slow, quiet change in the feed itself. The grain was being softened and swelled up with water and turned into something the bird could actually use, top to bottom, with near nothing wasted. My grandmother did not have the word for it. She just knew the sour crock fed more birds on less grain and kept them healthy through the winter. She was a lifetime ahead of the label. Here is what is really going on, plain as I can say it. The word for it is fermenting, the same thing that turns milk into yogurt, cabbage into sauerkraut, and flour into sourdough bread. When you cover that feed in water and let it sit a few days, the good natural bacteria that are already on the grain wake up and go to work. They eat the starches, and in doing it, they predigest the feed for the bird before she ever swallows it. 3 things come out of that. The feed swells up and near about doubles, so the same scoop feeds twice the birds. It fills a hen fuller on less, so she eats a smaller amount and walks away satisfied instead of pecking all day. And it loads that feed with the good bacteria a bird needs in her gut, so your flock is healthier, their droppings firm up, and the whole coop does better. The poultry researchers put real numbers to this in a study back in 2009, finding that birds on fermented feed ate less, digested more, and kept a stronger, healthier gut than birds on plain dry feed. The old sour crock and the laboratory shook hands and agreed. Now here's where most folks go wrong. and this is the part I promised you. This is the reason somebody tries this once, walks out to a jar of slimy, foul-smelling feed with fuzz growing on top, decides fermenting is too risky, and goes right back to the dry sack. Listen close, because this is the whole difference between a jar that works and a jar that rots. The one rule above all others is this: the feed has to stay under the water, every last kernel. Fermenting is the good bacteria taking over, and they do their work down in the water where the air cannot reach. But mold and rot need air. So the moment a layer of feed pokes up above the waterline and sits there dry in the open air, that is where the fuzz starts, and that is what spoils the whole jar. So you keep an inch of water over the top of the feed at all times. And because the grain drinks that water and swells, you check it and add more as you go. Second, you do not screw a lid down tight and seal it, because the ferment gives off a little gas and needs to breathe. A loose lid or a cloth and a rubber band is all it wants. Third, you give it a good stir once or twice a day to keep everything wet and moving. And here's your tell, the thing that tells you it worked. Good fermented feed smells pleasantly sour and tangy, like sourdough or a pickle crock. That is the smell you want. If it ever smells truly foul, rotten, like something died, or you see fuzzy mold on top, you made one of those mistakes and you throw that batch out and start over. Do it right, and it comes out sour and sweet smelling every time. And here's the thing the feed companies, and even a lot of the folks online, will not tell you. You do not need to go buy a special fermenting jar with a fancy lid off the internet to do this. You never did. My grandmother used a stone crock and a plate. Any glass jar, any food-safe bucket, any crock you already have in the house will do the job just fine. Do not let anybody sell you a gadget for a thing a jar and a rag have done for 100 years. So let me give you the whole method layer by layer so you can start a jar tonight. Number one is your vessel. Take any clean glass jar or a food-safe bucket, whatever size fits your flock. A single-gallon jar does a small flock of a few hens just right. If you have got a big flock, use a bucket or run 2 jars. That is your whole equipment list. Number 2 is the feed and the water. Fill your jar no more than a third of the way with your regular feed, and I mean no more than a third, because this is going to swell up and climb, and if you fill it halfway, it will push right up over the top on you. Then pour in cool water until it stands a good inch or 2 above the feed. Give it a real stir, because dry feed clumps and packs, and you want every bit of it wet. It will drink that water down quick, so come back in a few minutes and add more until you have got that inch of water sitting on top again. Number 3 is the weight. Set the jar somewhere out of the sun with a cloth or a loose lid over the top and just let it be. A warm kitchen works faster than a cold porch. So in the cold months, set it somewhere with a little heat in the room. Stir it once or twice a day and keep that inch of water over the feed. By the second day, you will see little bubbles start to rise, and that is the good bacteria going to work. Exactly what you want. By the third day, it has near about doubled. It smells sour and sweet, and it is ready to feed. Scoop out what your birds will clean up in a sitting, feed it to them wet, and give them just a day or 2 to take to it, because a bird that has only ever known dry feed will look at it funny at first. Then she will come running the rest of her life once she gets a taste. Now I know what some of you are thinking. My feed bill is already killing me, and I cannot afford to waste a single bag learning this. Or my flock is already big, and I am too far behind to start. Or I am afraid I will mess it up and poison my birds. None of that shuts the door on you. If money is tight, that is the very reason to start, because this is the fastest way there is to cut that bill without selling a single hen. Start with 1 small jar so there is nothing to waste while you learn the smell and the look of it. If your flock is big, you are the one who saves the most, because you are cutting the biggest bill. And you cannot easily poison a bird with this, because the sour smell tells you plain when a batch is good and when to toss it. This is about the most forgiving thing you will ever do for your flock. And now the one thing I save for the end, the piece that ties it all together and answers the question you have had in the back of your mind this whole time. Does this really give you more eggs? Here is the honest truth of it, and here is why. Grain carries something in it called phytic acid, and that phytic acid locks up a good share of the minerals in the feed, the phosphorus and the calcium, so the hen eats them but cannot fully use them. They pass right on through her. Well, the fermenting breaks that lock. The good bacteria free up those minerals so the hen can finally take them into her body. And phosphorus and calcium are the very things she builds a strong eggshell and a steady layout of. That is the real reason folks who ferment their feed start seeing harder shells and better laying. It is not magic, and it is not a story. The mineral was always in the feed. You just could not get it into the bird until now. And here is a small trick to go with it. When you feed out a batch, do not pour off all the sour liquid. Save a cup of it and pour it into your next jar as a starter, the same as a sourdough starter, and it will kick the next batch off faster and surer every time. So let me lay the whole thing out one more time, plain and in order, so you can do it tonight. First, take any clean jar or bucket and fill it no more than a third full with your regular feed. Second, pour in cool water until it stands an inch or two above the feed and stir it well so every bit is wet. Third, set it out of the sun with a loose lid or a cloth on top. Stir it once or twice a day and keep that inch of water over the feed the whole time. Fourth, by the third day it has doubled and smells sour and tangy, and it is ready. Feed it wet, save a cup of the liquid to start your next batch, and throw out any batch that ever smells truly rotten or grows fuzz. That is the entire thing. Half the feed bill, healthier birds, and better eggs out of a jar you already own. You did not lose this because it stopped working. You lost it because there is no money in it for anybody but you. A hen that fills up on half the feed is a hen that empties that $20 sack half as fast. And that is the last thing a feed company wants. They did not lie to you exactly. They just never mentioned the jar on the back porch that your own great-grandmother used every single day. You were not wasteful on purpose. You were just never told the simple thing. Now you have got it back. So do two things for me before you go. First, go back to that comment box and tell me what state you are in and about what you are spending on feed every month right now. I read every one, and sometimes your question turns into the next video. And second, if you would rather feed your own flock than feed a company, come along and sit on the fence with us. This is not about following a channel. It is a porch full of neighbors remembering the old ways one at a time. Next time I am going to show you the free thing you can grow on your own kitchen counter in 7 days. A tray of green feed that costs you almost nothing and cuts that grain bill even further through the dead of winter when there is not a blade of grass to be found. Most folks have never seen it done. I will show you next time. Before I let you go, I think about my grandmother Ada lifting that plate off the crock on a cold morning, that sour living smell rising up, feeding a whole flock on half of what the neighbors used. She used to say, you do not feed grain, you feed what the grain becomes. Take a little time, let the jar do the work, and I will see you next time.